Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Christine. We are going to, starting on time, we're going to have to finish about 5 minutes early today because our speaker has a class at 1:10 She's a working professor, so I'm afraid we have to skip out, but we're going to have a good time before then. When I first asked Professor Swain to speak to us today, I confess I didn't really know quite who I was talking to. She had a reputation as a conservative African-American political scientist with a slew of influential books behind her and a burgeoning media career and many counterintuitive views on race and immigration. And it was only later in the planning stages that we realized her talk could be scheduled the day after the presidential election. So here we are, the morning after, potentially one of the most momentous days in our nation's history, with the opportunity to hear from one of the most distinctive and provocative African-American scholars in the country. Now, we could be hearing her on Lou Dobbs, on CNN, PBS, ABC, BBC, even Fox News, but no, we are fortunate enough to have her live at our downtown library. Carol Swain is the author of many acclaimed books, beginning with Black Faces, Black Interests, the representation of African Americans in Congress, in 1994, which was named one of the 7 outstanding academic books of 1994 by Library Choice. It also received the Hardiman Prize, the 1994 Woodrow Wilson Prize for the best U.S. book on government policy, government and politics and international affairs. And it was the co-winner of the Key Award for the best book on Southern politics. And she got, or that book got, 3 Supreme Court citations. More recent books, which she's donating to the library, 1 or 2 that we don't already have, and some that we do have, which are out there displayed on the table. Include an edited volume debating immigration, the new white nationalism in America, its challenge to integration, which was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and contemporary voices of white nationalism. Vanderbilt stole Professor Swain from Princeton some years ago to join our law school and political science department. She was already a star, and her star has continued to rise since then, but it wasn't always thus. In a moving interview in the Nashville Scene this last June, she describes growing up as one of 12 children in rural West Virginia, watching her mother being regularly beaten by her alcoholic father, dropping out of high school, having 3 kids before she was 20, one of whom died, all before signing up to community college, driving herself through Roanoke College and a PhD at UNC Chapel Hill to the dizzy heights of academic success and celebrity. I mentioned her public prominence in the media. She spent 3 hours on the BBC as a commentator last night on the election. And I can only imagine what her schedule looks like this week. She also directs the Veritas Institute, through which she seeks to restore the hope of the American dream of success through hard work and civility in public discourse. In fact, I think, reading about that institute, it sounds a bit like her version of Yes, We Can. Finally, she's just been appointed by the president, I guess the old president, to the National Endowment for the Humanities Advisory Board for the next 6 years. Like her mentor, Thomas Merton, Carol Swain has an eye for how easily good intentions can pave the road to hell, for the unintended consequences of our actions. She's not frightened of speaking the truth to power, however counterintuitive it may seem. For example, she has strong doubts about affirmative action, about quotas, about illegal immigration, and about the adequacy of the representation that African Americans get with the Congressional Black Caucus. Well, I am truly honored and delighted that Professor Carol Swain has agreed to talk to us today, and I cannot wait to hear what she has to say about just how racist is Obama's America. Carol.
very pleased to be here today, and Professor Wood was very persuasive. Normally, no one in their right mind would accept a speaking engagement that close to the start of a class that they are teaching. And so he persuaded me to do this, and I'm honored to be here today and to be able to celebrate this historic moment with you all. Today I called my mother in the nursing home, and I told her, she has mild dementia, that America had elected a black president. And she said, "No, really?" "No, really?" And I said, "Yes." And then she said, "Well, what do you think?" And I have to admit that I'm one of the 4% of African Americans that did not vote for Senator Barack Obama. And I won't go into detail today about why I did not vote for him. That's a long story. But today I celebrate with those of you all who voted for him this historic moment. And I believe, and a lot of my beliefs are driven by my Christian faith, I believe that we have an obligation to support our leaders until they give us reason otherwise. And the American people have spoken. There were all sorts of factors that went into the election of this president, and I believe he's going to need the support and prayers of all of us. And so that's pretty much how I feel about the election. I intend to celebrate it along with the young people. I'm so happy for them. I know many of you probably had my experience that for a few years we voted for presidents that always lost. But just imagine the excitement, you know, that the young people feel that they actually participated in this historical moment of making something happen. And I think that for many of the families now we can go back to some measure of normality. We've been in divided households, right? Some of us have been in divided households. And I'm just glad to be at this point where we can just talk about the future and be excited. And one of the things I told my mother that I thought would happen, that I hope will happen from the election of Senator Barack Obama, is the fact that for black youth and black people that are in single-parent households, maybe seeing that picture-perfect family of the mother and the father and the kids intact will be something that he will be a role model for those families, and maybe things will begin to turn around. And you know, just maybe. And so I would have to say that Senator Obama has given me some hope. I'm hoping, you know, that there will be good things that will come from this presidency, and that he will be able to speak some of the hard truths that African Americans and all Americans need to hear. And for the civil rights leadership, and for some of the people that voted, you know, solely on the basis of race. And I don't think that's a good reason to vote for a candidate. When it came to African Americans, they always support the Democratic candidate, so it's not a surprise that so many of them voted for the Democrat. I think what was a surprise was that there were so many black Republicans that early on that they jumped ship and they voted for the black candidate. And so that was sort of a surprise. It was a surprise to me because if you really are driven by principle, the way they said they were, it seems that you would vote your ideology unless you wanted to punish the incumbents. And we all, I think many of us will agree that the Republicans messed up big time. And they didn't seem to be willing to admit that they had messed up big time. And so they, I believe, were overdue for a message. And the American people spoke, and they spoke loudly. And so I think that what we do at this moment is that we hope for the best. We pray for the safety of the family, because there are people in America. My books on white nationalism talks about a movement among whites that feel pretty much that they have been disenfranchised, and there are certainly leaders of that movement that don't fit the stereotype of those guys that they picked up, you know, in, I can't remember the name of the town. Was it Bell, Tennessee? Somewhere I never heard of. But that's the stereotype, and that's not really the face of white nationalism. And there are some concerns that working class, poor white people have that need to be addressed by the political system. and perhaps a coalition based on some of the class differences can address issues in a way that sort of de-emphasizes the racial divisions and pulls people together. Because I've said for years that it's really class, not race, that the important issues that are dividing many of us. And so I'm looking forward to, just seeing what happens in the months and days ahead. Today, I thought that I would just sort of go back over my research and my research of the past and just talk about some of the things I've written. With this book, Black Faces, Black Interests, published in the early 1990s, 1993, before the takeover of the Congress, I talked about descriptive versus substantive representation and the trade-off between the two, and pointed out that black faces does not always guarantee black representation of black interests. And at that time, there was this push to draw majority black districts, and my book was published in 1993. I talked about what would happen to black America if the Republicans took over the Congress, and we know that in 1994 they did take over the Congress. And many of the things that I talked about in this book did come to pass almost immediately after the takeover of the Congress. And one of the things that I discussed in this book, and I'm not really controversial. I'm just 10 or 15 years ahead of everyone else. And when they catch up with me, they realize that I'm right. I see my friend Lucius Outlaw in the back. Lucius, isn't that right?
No, I'm not going to agree with that, Cheryl.
Well, when I wrote this book, there's a chapter on black representatives of majority white districts. And at the time I wrote this book, the rest of the world was saying that whites wouldn't support black candidates. Yet, the data showed that 40% of the blacks in Congress came from districts that were majority white in the voting age population. And so blacks were already being elected. At the time, people were drawing black districts saying that you had to have 65% black district to elect a black candidate. That was ridiculous. They got their districts, they drew their districts, and what got elected was a lot of Republicans. And then the Supreme Court struck down the districts. The world said that the blacks would not get reelected, that Congress would, Elaine Jones, she was with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, she said that the number of black members of Congress would fit in the back of a taxi cab after the striking down of the majority black districts. I wrote an article saying that that was not true, that because of the incumbency advantage, they would be reelected. And so notice I used real political science, the incumbency advantage, and so I forecast that they would be reelected, and they were. Everyone that stood for reelection was reelected. And in this book, I talked about the characteristics of the black candidates that whites would support, and I pointed out that they would be younger people, educated pretty much in predominantly white schools and institutions, and that they would, that there was a new breed of black politician that would be elected by whites, and I felt that when black candidates lost, it wasn't necessarily because of their race, it was because that they were either too liberal. Whites, on average, tend to be more conservative than blacks, but back then I said that that was an avenue for electing more black politicians, and that they needed to look beyond black districts, and the world said I was insane. Who was right? Moving on to America and its historic election of a black president, I was approached in December 2006 by Ebony Magazine and asked, and along with Al Sharpton, to answer the question, is America ready for a black president? And we both answered it in the same way for different reasons. We both said yes. And the title of mine that they placed on mine is America ready for a black president? America is ready, but it won't be a veteran of the civil rights movement. And in this article, and I'm going to read parts of it to you or talk through parts of it, and then I will yield the floor to your questions. I said, I believe America is ready to elect a black president who has the attributes and credentials to make our nation feel good about itself, its trajectory, how far it's come. But the first successful black president would not be a Jesse Jackson or an Al Sharpton or any veteran activist of the civil rights movement. Such a candidate with heavy baggage would evoke too much white guilt, and he or she would be seen more as a, quote, black candidate than one who happened to be black. The first successful black candidate would be a person like Barack Obama or General Colin Powell, both of whom embody the hope of the American dream. It will be a person who ascribes to the mainstream political and social values that place heavy emphasis on hard work and individual responsibility. These examples are lighter-skinned, offspring of foreign-born immigrants, but one could easily imagine that a black American descendant of slaves with the right credentials and the right skin color could garner the heart and minds of a majority of the American public. The hardcore racist element in America, those that would threaten the life of Senator Obama, would oppose a black man. I said that the hardcore racist element that would oppose a black man because he is a black man is not sufficiently large enough to deny the nomination or presidency to the black person. And then I talked about Deval Patrick, the first black governor of Massachusetts, the same state that sent Edward Brooke to the Senate in the mid-1960s. I said black candidates across the nation are winning victories in non-black district electorates. What matters more than race are money, connections, and ideas. The more successful candidates will be rich themselves or have the ability to tap into big money from traditional party donors or maybe from foreign nationals if they can get away with it. The 2006 election, I said it provided reasons for optimism, and I was not one of the ones that agreed that Harold Ford Jr. lost because of his race. I think he lost for a number of reasons. I pointed out that the Bradley effect was not present in that race, and the Bradley effect is the tendency of whites to overstate in doing the exit poll data or doing the polling whether or not they're going to support a black candidate or whether or not they voted for one. It was not present in the Harold Ford race, and I don't think that race was a factor in his loss. I said I thought it was his youth and his singleness. For the hardcore racists, his singleness raised the real possibility that Harold Ford Jr. could actually marry their daughter. And I said I believe that America will elect a black male president long before it elects a woman of any race. At play are our Judeo-Christian and now Muslim traditions that have limited the roles of women. Unlike a black man on a global scale, a woman has to overcome the perception that she will be weak on defense and unable to persuade world leaders of nations where women are viewed as subordinate beings. In a world where people of color vastly outnumber those of European descent, the right black man would make America proud. So it didn't take as long to be vindicated on this one. But I should have stopped with that opinion piece, but I wrote one for the Tennessean and they put a headline on it, not Clinton or Obama in '08. That was not my headline. Basically, I said all the reasons why I thought Hillary Clinton would not be elected president. And I said that for Obama, that he did not have the experience. And what I was wrong on is that I assumed that America's first black president would be overqualified, because in a lot of ways, I think when blacks are first in a particular position, they tend to have more qualifications, not less. And so for Senator Obama, I think he's the most fortunate, luckiest man because everything has broken his way. And I look at my own life and my own journey, and I believe, in favor, and I believe that there are all these forces in the world, and, I'm a Sarah Palin Pentecostal. And so, maybe he's chosen for such a time as this. I'm chosen for such a time as this. You're chosen for such a time as this. There's so many factors that are in play, but I do believe that it's God that raises up leaders and puts down leaders, and for whatever reason, and they don't always have to be godly men and women to be used, he's the man of the hour, and I think we all owe him our support. We owe him our pledge. And I think that we have to work together to transcend our racial differences. And right now, I think that we're all called upon to use our sphere of influence to help the rest of the nation, the 50% that didn't vote for Senator Barack Obama, to accept that this is a new day, and it can be a bright day, and Americans' future can change. And we all have to be vigilant. We have to watch the Congress. We have to send out emails. We have to do everything we can, to make sure that that our country, remains strong, and that it's not turned into, the nightmare that some Marxist country or some third world nation. We have to be vigilant for all of these things. But right now, we're called to support the president until he gives us reason not to. Thank you.
Well, as usual, I'm just going to ask our speaker just a couple of questions, and then once we've got through that, we'll open up questions to the floor. I'd just like to start out by asking you a question that draws on the way John McCain gave his concession speech yesterday, which is kind of interesting, because he said it was a great day for African Americans in the United States, and that was pretty much the way he characterized it. And then, believe it or not, Karl Rove, you remember him? He said every American ought to celebrate tonight. This is a remarkable thing. And actually, in that respect, Karl Rove seems to be kind of slightly more open to the broader impact of Obama's election than John McCain. But I was interested in the fact that McCain said that African Americans should celebrate. And I guess I'm wondering, because I know somewhere else in something I read of yours, you were worried about the prospect of race war, which is the darker side of an election like this. But there's this wonderful hope and thought that somehow whites might get over racism and that instead of provoking a backlash, which is obviously one of the worries, that this election might actually bring about a transformation in white consciousness. And I'm just wondering if that possibility is there for you.
I did not view Senator McCain's comments as meaning that other people shouldn't view it as a historic night. And I think that racism is a two-way street, and white people need to get over it, black people need to get over it. I think that a lot of us, that we're tribal by nature, and that's something that we have to overcome. So it is a historic day for America, and I don't think that some of the blacks that voted for Senator Obama realized that they just gave up that Trump card.
Can you just elaborate a little more?
Well, the Trump card, in the sense that it's going to be much harder to say that America is a racist country and everything that happens is racism, that with the election of Senator Barack Obama, I think it's going to force people to have to take more responsibility for their own decisions, for their own lives, that type of thing. And so I think some people will figure that out tomorrow.
So some people are describing Obama, or even the era that, the America that he's sort of ushering in as post-racial. Now, do you have any sense of what that means, and do you agree with that?
I think that this book, The New White Nationalism in America's Challenge to Integration, it did not win any prizes. It was dismissed as apocalyptic. But I believe that this is the most important book I've written in my life. And it argues that we're headed for unprecedented levels of racial conflict and turmoil, not a racial war like the war before between the states. I think that there's so many unresolved issues that we did not have an honest dialogue about race during this contest. We have not had an honest dialogue about race probably in my lifetime, a real honest dialogue. And I think that we elected a black president, but there's so many conditions, so many issues that need to be discussed. And if one side is shut down by being called racist when they raise the issues, then you're not going to have a dialogue. And we're not post-racial, we'll not be post-racial until you can attack and debate black men, white men, brown men, yellow men on an equal basis without calling each other names. We have to listen to each other because there's usually a grain of truth in every stereotype. There's a grain of truth, and if we can listen to each other, maybe, and my Veritas Institute, which is pretty much, it's like on hold, it never caught off, but initially it was designed to bring together opponents on controversial issues and create a space where people could thrash out their differences, because I don't believe any one side has the truth, and if you can get people together in a room and get them talking honestly with one another, and something I try to do in the classroom, that you'll move closer to the truth. And Veritas, as you know, that didn't go anywhere, and then I hired a consultant, and the consultant came up with a new theme, and it's like pretty much dormant right now. But I believe my first idea was the idea, and we had not reached the place in America where we can talk honestly to one another as equal human beings about what we see and what we believe.
Barack Obama is described as the first African-American president, but I mean, what I found interesting about him is A, that he's biracial, that he's got a white mother and a black father, and B, that he was born and raised outside the United States and then grew up in Hawaii. I mean, this seems to me to be a remarkable phenomenon. I mean, do you think it's important? I mean, do you think it helps explain how he got where he got? Well,
initially, bless their hearts, the black leadership said he was not black enough for black America because he wasn't really black. And so, they asked me what I thought. And I said, I thought black America would support him, and they would support him with enthusiasm. And as soon as the black leaders figured out that black Americans would support Obama, and they would support him with enthusiasm, they jumped on the other side. But initially, the points that you raised were raised, and they were dismissed. And so he's not really a black American descendant of slaves. He is, as I say in this article, that the first successful candidate, would be someone that didn't remind people of slavery. And so none of his relatives were slaves. He doesn't evoke the same white guilt. And I think that's important in explaining why he was able to be accepted so well. And I do think color matters, and the darker the skin of the person worldwide, it seems to be that they earn less money, they fare less well, and that's just America. It's not going to change overnight, and that racism, that colorism is as common among people of color as it is among white people.
Excuse me, I just got a call here. You won't believe this. This is Barack Obama, and he knows that he knows that Barack is calling, and he knows that you're here. And what he's calling the most prominent African American intellectuals in the country, and he wants their advice. And so, hold on a minute. What he wants to know is, what are the 3 things that he should bear in mind when he becomes president? that you in particular would recommend to him?
He should bear in mind that one day that people one day that people can hail you and love you, and the next day they're ready to kill you. And he should keep in mind, the old saying that keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And he should realize that all of those unrealistic promises that he made to people to get himself elected, that they're going to be standing at the door with their hands open, and so he had better be preparing an answer for them and prepared now, because he has 100 days to sort of stave off the people that are going to be outside the White House protesting. So I think that Senator Obama, I wish him well. Be careful what you ask for. This is for the people that voted for him, because we're in such uncharted waters. A lot was promised. People have expectations. Some people voted out of ignorance. Some people many white people voted because they thought it would solve America's race problems, and that was ridiculous. The world thinks, that he's going to solve their problems and send all this money overseas. That's ridiculous. We don't have the money. Are we going to get it from China? And so it's not a job I want, nor would I wish it on anyone I loved.
Okay, I think it's time we asked other people for questions, and I'm going to ask Carol just to make some notes, and so that we can raise a bunch of questions and she can answer them all at the end.
I said, hey, one. You mentioned that you were Pentecostal in parts area. I didn't understand that. Can you explain what you meant?
Okay, thank you.
I just meant that my denomination, well, it's not really, I actually go to a non-denominational church, but I have Pentecostal beliefs, and she is affiliated also with a similar type of church. And so a lot of the faith principles that have motivated her, I share, and I share her respect for human life. And there are a lot of places that I connect with her much more closely than I do with some of the policies of the Democratic Party. And on the life issue, I really don't understand. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be answering the question. I can't follow instructions. I have this ADHD, sorry.
Like a maverick.
Good afternoon. I have
Okay.
two questions. The first one is, you made a comment that the country hasn't done an honest job of discussing race, and I wonder what that looks like to you on a person-to-person basis. I tend to disagree with that statement, so I'm interested in your thoughts on that. And then the second question I have is, I came today with some sort of a little bit of embedded fear for the Obama family's well-being, just based on what I'm aware of in terms of race relations in this country. So, is it better? Is it worse than it was in the 90s? Is it on the healing road, or are we, you may have addressed that indirectly earlier, but those are just my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it gentleman over here and then one right at the back?
Yes, I just wanted to know what you thought about the effect of the media on the race, on the election, and also if you feel that perhaps they may have taken the race issue and promoted it a bit by essentially saying that people who wouldn't vote for him are racist.
Okay, thank you. This lady here and then the gentleman in the back.
Okay. Professor Swain, I would like to congratulate you on your achievement first. And I don't know if I would say what I really have is a question, but I do take an issue with several statements you made. One in particular is that you said Obama won because of luck. Well, if he runs the country like he ran his campaign, none of us have anything to worry about.
Gentleman right back and then a lady here.
Professor Swain, I have two questions, really two propositions to put to you. The first is racial, and the second is political science. The political science question will pick up on the question just asked. On the racial front, how far are you willing to take your light-skinned, dark-skinned analysis? That is to say, would you suggest to this audience that the acceptance of Barack Obama as president will be greater than the acceptance of Michelle Obama as First Lady, because she, obviously, is more full-blooded African American than he is and has darker skin? Number two, I think almost every commentator has noted that the Obama campaign was the best run campaign for president since at least the Kennedy presidential campaign in 1960. Do you give him credit in terms of experience for the excellence and the discipline of that campaign? And as part of that, do you have any analysis of perhaps the single most disciplined and careful aspect of that campaign, which was the decision and consistency with which President-elect Obama refrained from attacking either Hillary Clinton or Sarah Palin?
Thanks very much. Question over here, and then we need a mic for the gentleman over here.
I live in Green Hills, and if I come to town, I ride the bus. And the conversation starts, and I refer to a black person as a black person or a black man or a black woman. They are ready to pelt me with whatever they got in their purse or in their pocket. And I ran out of fingers when you first started talking because you were saying black person, black man, black. I ran out of fingers and I thought, well, how does she get by with teaching and saying black? Because they'd kill me before I got to say it if I didn't shut up. So how do you get by with calling somebody a black person or a black man or a black woman? Because I'd be killed if I did that. I learned that about 6 months ago.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman over here.
Ms. Swain, I'd like your comments, please, on the following subject. After the last 8 years disastrous Bush administration, to what extent do you think that it's race that won this election, or is it the fact that he's a Democrat after these last 8 years?
Maybe we got enough paper left for a couple more questions. Can we take two more? Carol, a couple more questions?
I would rather try to answer the questions and then take more.
You want to try and just have a few minutes answering questions and then see if there are any more?
I think so.
Okay, let's do that.
And I'm actually going to try to quickly answer as many as I can. What would this honest discussion of race look like? I don't know about you all, but I have many friends of different races. I have two prayer partners. They're both Caucasian. One is Caucasian, one is Indian, an immigrant. And I feel like that in my friendships and even in my classrooms that we can say anything to one another. And it may sound racist, it may even really be racist, but we just talk about it and we don't get angry with each other. And part of what I do in my classroom is try to create a safe space where people can talk without being guarded all the time. I mean, I would go crazy if I tried to guard myself, so I don't try to guard myself. I don't care if I'm politically incorrect. And, you know, I'm sorry if you were overly sensitive and I offended you, but that's your problem, not mine. Is racism better or worse? I think that we are headed for some tumultuous days ahead, and that it remains to be seen, you know, what this election will really bring. I think that there are some white people that believe America, I talk about in this book, that it was founded by Anglo-Saxons for Anglo-Saxons, and when we talk about a nation of immigrants, that what they had in mind were white immigrants, not people of color, that the founding fathers were racist. There's a lot of data to suggest that they were products of that era, and so they were racist by our definitions, and that they never contemplated that America would become a majority-minority country. If you believe, as they believe, that people of color are inferior, that many of the ones, the immigrants, come from third world nations, and that they're going to turn America into a third world nation, and they're not adopting American values, and they're not adopting the language. They believe that there's something at stake. And there are some white nationalists that voted for Senator Obama because they hate Senator McCain, and they believe that they needed a visual aid. And so some percentage of white people that supported him because they think that it will give momentum to their movement. And so we're not out of the water yet. That's why I said it's important for all of us, regardless of how we feel or whether we supported him, that he is the president. We need to support him. And he does need our prayers, because I think that there will be continuing suicide attempts. Not suicide, excuse me. Assassination attempts. I think that the commentators, the media, I have never seen them being so much in the tank for a particular candidate. They really wanted this to happen, and there were a lot of things that they could have publicized. Information started coming out at the end of the campaign over the weekend, that if we had responsible journalism, that information would have come out sooner. Money, media, and Palin, I think, were the greatest factors in his victory. And Sarah Palin, I think she got a bad rap for a number of reasons, and it had to do with sexism. I think she was the only candidate that had executive experience. I don't think she's an idiot. You know something? What does the vice president do? I think that it varies. It depends on the president what the vice president does and how much power the vice president has. And so that was not a stupid question. It was not a stupid question. And so I think that the media, we elected this president. I know some of my colleagues, they said they supported him because they thought he would make America look good in the eyes of the world. I don't think there's a good enough reason to support a president. I am not a Republican. I was not a supporter of John McCain. I had to hold my nose and vote. I almost voted for Nader or Barr. I didn't care. And so I think there's something wrong with that two-party system, and that we have a lot of work to do. Calling blacks blacks, I'm black and I'm proud. And up until I don't know whether it was 84 or 88, Jesse Jackson announced that henceforth black people would be called African American. We've been called colored, we've been called Negro, we've been called Afro-American, we're called African American, but now there's so many real African Americans in America that we may end up being called something else. I think we need to leave behind the hyphenated IDs. And if you look at the white nationalists, one of the things I point out is that they use the language of multiculturalism very well, that they have learned the language of the left, and it works against the left in this instance, because if you believe that every group should celebrate their unique heritage and their pride and all of this stuff like that, they're saying, okay, if every group, then why not whites? Why is it every group except whites? That's not fair. That's a racial double standard. They say discrimination is wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's against, Civil Rights Act. It's wrong to discriminate against anyone. Well, white people are being discriminated against, and there's no one defending white people. That's the argument. And I think a lot of young people on college campuses that they have had, Black History Month and multiculturalism, through school, to the point that they're rebelling against a lot of that, and they don't understand what made sense in the 60s, may not make sense today when the nation is as racially diverse as it is. By 2042, and again, I told my students I told them years ago that the data was wrong, that America would become majority white, majority minority long before 2050, because the percentage of minorities, percentage of whites in the country is overstated, and the percentage of minorities undercounted. And there are minorities that look like me that consider themselves white. And the census says, what race do you consider yourself? You can consider yourself anything you want to consider yourself. And so the white category is overstated, and then with so many people that don't want to be counted by the census, there are more people of color here. So the country is becoming majority minority. Pretty soon it'll be 30 or 40% majority minority. Some of the policies that we put in place 40, 50 years ago have to be re-examined in light of where we are today. So that's my position on that. In the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. How much is race and how much it was the Democrat? I think maybe if Hillary Clinton had run, maybe she could have won this year, because it seemed like that the voters were angry, they were frustrated, they were not going to reward the Republicans. Everyone's portfolio, everyone that had a portfolio, it dropped, and I didn't even look at my 401k, because it's the only money I have. I didn't look at it. And I kind of think that it was a year that we were going to punish the incumbents, and that's what happened. And Senator Obama has been awfully lucky. I mean, he had the luck to run against Alan Keyes. And if you look at his whole career, he's had luck, 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 luck. And so, yeah, he had luck, but he also had skill, and he had money. He had so much money. He outspent McCain 4-1. And if the money had been more equal, that probably would have been a different outcome. And I would imagine that a lot of things will be coming out after the election, and that things that some of us may wish we had heard before the election. But this is politics, and I think that he's a Chicago politician, and that's good. It's good because a Chicago politician will do what he needs to do, and we need a president that will do what he needs to do for the people. And so there, I cast my lot with Chicago politicians, and I think that that I'm optimistic. I have hope, and we need a change, and that's my position. And we only have time for one other question.
Let's see if we can just squeeze in 2 more questions. But we do have to get out of here by 5 to 1.
I want to do the what if. Since Obama seems to have had luck, according to what you were saying, he had luck. What if McCain had won? Do you think that would have been luck also?
That would have been a miracle. Oh, I forgot to answer the question about the skin color. The thing, there are studies, and one of my colleagues, Joni Hirsch at the law school, she's done some of these studies about dark skin, light skin immigrants, and the lighter skin immigrants earn more money. And I think that it does hurt. The fact that Michelle Obama is dark skinned, that connects with Black America. Just like Clarence Thomas being dark skinned, Black Americans supported Clarence Thomas. The elites didn't, but the ordinary people did. And so, yeah, there's studies to show that you are at a disadvantage if you have darker skin. And again, that's not just the American way. That seems to be the way of the world, that the darker skinned people have a tougher road to hoe. They have a disadvantage.
Professor Swain, why is it that you have favor and Barack Obama has luck?
Oh. Well, I'm not gonna battle that. Maybe we both have favor. I said I believe God raises up leaders, and he's the leader for our times. I don't agree with a lot of the moral principles that he espouses, but I believe that God allows the leaders. I believe that God allows leaders to get elected, and I have said that he is our president, and until he gives us a reason not to support him, I think that we all owe him our support. And so he has clearly been favored by the stars. Somebody's favored him, that's for sure.
We got lots more questions, but I'm afraid we've got to call it a day because Professor Swain has another appointment. But thank you.